Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Allah's Messenger used to practice itikaf in the last 10 days of the month of Ramadan. Sahih al-Bukhari 2025 Reference 33 Hadith 1. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf. Narrated Aisha sad face. The wife of the Prophet. The Prophet used to practice itikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan till he died, and then his wives used to practice itikaf after him. Sahih al-Bukhari 2026 Reference 33 Hadith 2. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. Allah's Messenger used to practice itikaf in the middle 10 days of Ramadan, and once he stayed in itikaf till the night of the 21st, and it was the night in the morning of which he used to come out of his itikaf. The Prophet said, "Whoever was in itikaf with me should stay in itikaf for the last 10 days, for I was informed of the date, of the night, of Qadr. But I have been caused to forget it. In the dream, I saw myself prostrating in mud and water in the morning of that night. So, look for it in the last 10 nights and in the odd ones of them. It rained that night and the roof of the mosque dribbled as it was made of leaf stalks of date palms. I saw with my own eyes the mark of mud and water on the forehead of the Prophet. That is in the morning of the 21st. Sahih al-Bukhari 2027 Reference 33 Hadith 3. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf. Narrated Aisha. The Prophet used to bend his head out to me while he was in itikaf in the mosque during my monthly periods, and I would comb and oil his hair. Sahih al-Bukhari 2028 Reference 33 Hadith 4. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf. Narrated Aisha sad face. The wife of the Prophet. Allah's Messenger used to let his head in the house while he was in the mosque, and I would comb and oil his hair. When in itikaf, he used not to enter the house except for a need. Sahih al-Bukhari 2029 Reference 33 Hadith 5. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf. Narrated Aisha. The Prophet used to embrace me during my menses. He also used to put his head out of the mosque while he was in itikaf, and I would wash it during my menses. Sahih al-Bukhari 2031 Reference 33 Hadith 6. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf. Narrated Ibn Umar. Umar asked the Prophet, I vowed in the pre-Islamic period of ignorance to stay in itikaf for one night in al-Masjid al-Haram. The Prophet said to him, fulfill your vow. Sahih al-Bukhari 2032 Reference 33 Hadith 7. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf. Narrated Amra. Aisha said, the Prophet used to practice itikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan, and I used to pitch a tent for him, and after offering the morning prayer, he used to enter the tent. Hafsa asked the permission of Aisha to pitch a tent for her, and she allowed her, and she pitched her tent. When Zainab bint Jahsh saw it, she pitched another tent. In the morning the Prophet noticed the tents. He said, what is this? He was told of the whole situation. Then the Prophet said, do you think that they intended to do righteousness by doing this? He therefore abandoned the itikaf in that month and practiced itikaf for 10 days in the month of Shawwal. Sahih al-Bukhari 2033 Reference 33 Hadith 8. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf. Narrated Aisha. The Prophet intended to practice itikaf, and when he reached the place where he intended to perform itikaf, he saw some tents, the tents of Aisha, Hafsa and Zainab. So, he said, "Do you consider that they intended to do righteousness by doing this?" And then he went away and did not perform itikaf in Ramadan, but performed it in the month of Shawwal for 10 days. Sahih al-Bukhari 2034 reference 33 Hadith 9. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf narrated Ali bin al-Husayn. Safiya, the wife of the Prophet, told me that she went to Allah's Messenger to visit him in the mosque while he was in itikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan. She had a talk with him for a while, then she got up in order to return home. The Prophet accompanied her. When they reached the gate of the mosque, opposite the door of Salama, 2 Ansari men were passing by and they greeted Allah's apostle. He told them, "Do not run away," and said, "She is my wife, Safiya bint Hayy." Both of them said, "Subhanallah, how dare we think of any evil, O Allah's Messenger?" And they felt it. The Prophet said to them, "Satan reaches everywhere in the human body as blood reaches in it, everywhere in one's body. I was afraid lest Satan might insert an evil thought in your minds." Sahih al-Bukhari 2035 reference 33 Hadith 10. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf narrated Abu Salama bin Abdur Rahman. I asked Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, "Did you hear Allah's Messenger talking about the night of Qadr?" He replied in the affirmative and said, "Once we were in itikaf with Allah's Messenger in the middle 10 days of Ramadan, and we came out of it in the morning of the 20th, and Allah's Messenger delivered a sermon on the 20th of Ramadan, and said, I was informed of the date of the night of Qadr in my dream, but had forgotten it. So, look for it in the odd nights of the last 10 nights of the month of Ramadan. I saw myself prostrating in mud and water on that night, as a sign of the night of Qadr. So, whoever had been in itikaf with Allah's Messenger should return for it." The people returned to the mosque for itikaf. There was no trace of clouds in the sky. But all of a sudden a cloud came and it rained. Then the prayer was established. They stood for the prayer, and Allah's Messenger prostrated in mud and water, and I saw mud over the forehead. Sahih al-Bukhari 2036 reference 33 Hadith 11. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf and the nose of the Prophet. Sahih al-Bukhari 2036 reference 33 Hadith 11. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf narrated Aisha. One of the wives of Allah's Messenger practiced itikaf with him while she had bleeding in between her periods, and she would see red, blood, or yellowish traces, and sometimes we put a tray beneath her when she offered the prayer. Sahih al-Bukhari 2037 reference 33 Hadith 12. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf narrated Ali bin al-Husayn. From Safiya, the Prophet's wife. The wives of the Prophet were with him in the mosque, while he was in itikaf. And then they departed, and the Prophet said to Safiya bint Hayy, "Don't hurry up, for I shall accompany you," and her dwelling was in the house of Usama. The Prophet went out, and in the meantime 2 Ansari men met him, and they looked at the Prophet and passed by. The Prophet said to them, "Come here. She is my wife, Safiya bint Hayy." They replied, "Subhanallah, how dare we think of evil, O Allah's Apostle? We never expect anything bad from you." The Prophet replied, "Satan circulates in the human being as blood circulates in the body, and I was afraid lest Satan might insert an evil thought in your minds." Sahih al-Bukhari 2038 reference 33 Hadith 13. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah. Itikaf narrated Ali bin al-Husayn from Safiya. Safiya went to the Prophet while he was in itikaf. When she returned, the Prophet accompanied her walking. An Ansari man saw him. When the Prophet noticed him, he called him and said, "Come here." She is Safiya. Sufyan, a sub-narrator, perhaps said that the Prophet had said, "This is Safiya." And Satan circulates in the body of Adam's offspring as his blood circulates in it. A sub-narrator asked Sufyan, "Did Safiya visit him at night?" He said, "Of course, at night." Sahih al-Bukhari 2039 reference 33 Hadith 14. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah. Itikaf narrated Abu Sa'id. We practiced itikaf with Allah's Messenger in the middle 10 days of Ramadan. In the morning of the 20th of Ramadan, we shifted our baggage, but Allah's Messenger came to us and said, "Whoever was itikaf should return to his place of itikaf, for I saw," that is, was informed about the date of this night of Qadr, and saw myself prostrating in mud and water. When I returned to my place, the sky was overcast with clouds and it rained. By him who sent Muhammad, peace be upon him, with the truth, the sky was covered with clouds from the end of that day, and the mosque, which was roofed with leaf stalks of date palm trees, leaked with rain, and I saw the trace of mud and water over the nose of the Prophet and its tip. Sahih al-Bukhari 2040 reference 33 Hadith 15. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah. Itikaf narrated Amra bint Abdur Rahman from Aisha. Allah's Messenger used to practice itikaf every year in the month of Ramadan. And after offering the morning prayer, he used to enter the place of his itikaf. Aisha asked his permission to let her practice itikaf, and he allowed her, and so she pitched a tent in the mosque. When Hafsa heard of that, she also pitched a tent for herself, and when Zainab heard of that, she too pitched another tent. When, in the morning, Allah's Messenger had finished the morning prayer, he saw 4 tents and asked, "What is this?" He was informed about it. He then said, "What made them do this? Is it righteousness? Remove the tents, for I do not want to see them." So, the tents were removed. The Prophet did not perform itikaf that year in the month of Ramadan, but did it in the last 10 days of Shawwal. Sahih al-Bukhari 2041 reference 33 Hadith 16. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah. Itikaf narrated Abdullah bin Umar. Umar bin al-Khattab said, "O Allah's Messenger, I vowed in the pre-Islamic period to perform itikaf in al-Masjid al-Haram for one night." The Prophet said, "Fulfill your vow." So, he performed itikaf for one night. Sahih al-Bukhari 2042 reference 33 Hadith 17. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah. Itikaf narrated Ibn Umar. That Umar had vowed in the pre-Islamic period to perform itikaf in al-Masjid al-Haram. A sub-narrator thinks that Umar vowed to perform itikaf for one night. Allah's Messenger said to Umar, "Fulfill your vow." Sahih al-Bukhari 2043 reference 33 Hadith 18. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah. Itikaf narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet used to perform itikaf every year in the month of Ramadan for 10 days, and when it was the year of his death, he stayed in itikaf for 20 days. Sahih al-Bukhari 2044 reference 33 Hadith 19. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah. Itikaf narrated Amra bint Abdur Rahman from Aisha. Allah's Messenger mentioned that he would practice itikaf in the last 10 days of Ramadan. Aisha asked his permission to perform itikaf and he permitted her. Hafsa asked Aisha to take his permission for her, and she did so. When Zainab bint Jahsh saw that, she ordered a tent to be pitched for her, and it was pitched for her. Allah's messenger used to proceed to his tent after the prayer. So, he saw the tents and asked, "What is this?" He was told that those were the tents of Aisha, Hafsa, and Zainab. Allah's apostle said, "Is it righteousness which they intended by doing so? I am not going to perform itikaf." So he returned home. When the fasting month was over, he performed itikaf for 10 days in the month of Shawwal. Sahih al-Bukhari 2045 reference 33 Hadith 20. Sahih al-Bukhari, retiring to a mosque for remembrance of Allah, itikaf narrated Urwa. Aisha during her menses used to comb and oil the hair of the Prophet while he used to be in itikaf in the mosque. He would stretch out his head towards her while she was in her chamber. Sahih al-Bukhari 2046 reference 33 Hadith 21.